Students come to us with varied experience in literacy and vocabulary. That variation keeps teaching interesting to say the least, so before we start, I would like you to quickly jot down or record the following. First, 2 or 3 words that describe the characteristics of the vocabulary of learners in your classroom with limited English proficiency. And second, a definition of the word, word. This topic will look at differences in how language and vocabulary develop in relation to home environment, social economic status, parental and caregiver occupations, level of educational attainment, and child and adult discourse patterns, which may be very different in different cultures. I am Dr. Linda Rittner from the University of Central Oklahoma. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Education Sciences, Foundations, and Research. What is a word? Now that sounds like a ridiculous question, doesn't it? But we have some driving questions related to that silly definition. First of all, what are some of the issues with development of vocabulary? Who are the students most at risk for lags in vocabulary development? And what does this lag look like in early childhood education, elementary education, and in middle and high school? The Oxford Dictionary defines a word as a single, distinct, conceptual unit of language, a collection of words that we can use, expressive words, and words we can understand, the receptive words, becomes the basis of our working vocabulary. Think of this working vocabulary as the foundation of learning, because it really is. We know that not all children learn the same words or even the same number of words before they enter school for the first time. We know that some home environments build strong vocabularies no matter what the first language is. Preschool children with attenuated or limited working vocabularies generally don't catch up to their more advantaged peers in spite of instruction. We know that for many children who start school with a limited working vocabulary, the results can be startling when we measure achievement 3 or 4 years later. Emerging research indicates that the expressive and receptive vocabularies that children have when they enter public education can strongly predict reading achievement by age 9. This lag continues through middle and high school and long into adulthood. We will look at these issues closely in the upcoming sections. What is a concept? Think of a concept you often teach. What is it? Quickly jot it down. If you have not yet viewed the lesson on concept formation, please take a moment to jot down your concept. I'll wait while you identify a concept you routinely teach. Now look at that concept. Ask yourself this question. Have I identified a concept or a process? What vocabulary will my learners need to fully understand the concept? You will recall from the concepts lesson that a concept is a categorization of objects, ideas, events, and even people. However, in our fast-paced classrooms, concepts are generally reduced to a single word, or perhaps 2 words. Do you recall the Oxford definition of word? The Oxford Dictionary defines a word as a single, distinct conceptual unit of language. It's easy to forget how closely words and concepts are related. What does the evidence say? Teachers can no longer assume that words become symbols for concepts, and learners may not have the words to go with the ideas that teachers are trying to convey. Because of increasing language diversity in our classrooms, we can no longer assume that the words students already have in their lexicon can become symbols for concepts. Think about what this actually says based on your knowledge of language development in children. One of the problems in remediating vocabulary or helping learners with limited English proficiency build stronger working vocabularies is that we forget that they may not have the same idea about words that we do. Academic English is sometimes far removed from the language spoken in the home environment, even if that first language is English. We cannot afford in the classroom to make the assumption that a word in general academic contexts will have the same meaning in a learner's existing working vocabulary. The important shout-out message here is, if students don't understand the word, they won't understand the concept. We will build concepts in another lesson, and yes, this is an advertisement. I know you can read these objectives for yourself, but I would like to have you listen while I read them. After viewing the information in these lessons, you will be able to first explain the difference between receptive and expressive vocabulary. Second, to identify at least 3 issues that impact the acquisition of vocabulary in learners with limited English proficiency. Third, describe the impact of limited or attenuated academic vocabulary on academic achievement. And fourth, explain the importance and functions of words. Now, what I've done here is activate 2 learning modalities, visual and auditory. How could you add a motor modality to hardwire this information? We'll explain more about learning modalities and preferences later, but think about that. One last note. In this lesson, we will present background information, research, and theory about vocabulary acquisition and barriers to acquisition. In upcoming lessons in the Teaching All Language Learners, the TALL course, you will find explicit strategies and ideas for instruction. Stay tuned. I bet you feel just like the girl in the picture, but this is a good time to do a little thinking in addition to making some notes before we continue with part 2 of this lesson. Look at the descriptive words you wrote a few moments ago and jot down a few more ideas. What, if any, information in this short introduction was new to you? Make note of it. Try to think of the characteristics of the vocabulary expertise of the average student in your classroom. We're going to explore some back page information in the next section. See you there.